representatives that we have to speak to us as SRE Fellows. We've got Mr. John Moodey from the DA who's speaking to us this morning. John Moodey is the provincial leader for the DA in Gauteng. His political career started in 1978 when he was working at the Johannesburg Traffic Department. At the time, he was elected as a shop steward and a year later into the executive body of the Coloured and Asian Employees Union, which later became known as the Combined Employees Union, where black workers were allowed to unionize. He served in this capacity until 1996, when he resigned to start his own business. In 1986, he worked at the Solid Waste Management Department, where he advocated for the training and promotion of black workers. This gave many disadvantaged workers the opportunity to move into administrative or managerial roles. In 1996, he relocated to Florida and Roodepoort, and in the following year, he arranged for inhabitants from an informal settlement there to be moved to a more habitable area. In the same year, he was approached by both the Democratic Alliance and the National Party to become a key member. He decided to join the Democratic Alliance, and in 1998, he was elected as the chairperson of the Florida branch. Within the Democratic Alliance, Moodey was elected to the position of Democratic Alliance Provincial Leader in 2006. In 2009, he returned to legislature and was elected as caucus leader, which is the leader of the official opposition, until 2011. In 2012, he was again elected to the position of provincial leader for the DA in Gauteng, and in 2014 re-elected into the legislature, where he is currently serving as the leader of the official opposition. So with that incredible life's work, we are very pleasured and honored to have him join us today and share with us some of what the DA is about. I think we've agreed that he'll speak for about 20 or 30 minutes. Once he concludes, then we'll allow time for questions. I'll ask that in the first 20 or 30 minutes that if you do have a question, let it be a question for clarity, not a question on any of the specific policies. So make a note of other questions that you have that aren't clarity focused, and we'll address those at the end. Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Moodey.
Good morning to you all.
Morning.
It's actually afternoon, eh? It's late. You know, normally when I get to my meetings, it's not very often, but it does happen. When I get there late and I tell my colleagues, I'm sorry that I'm late. But don't worry, I'll make it up, I'll leave early. So I hope I'm not going to bore you this afternoon. And you are here at this fellowship academy, or am I correct? Is that what you call yourself, an institute? Because you want to be leaders, isn't it? Remember one thing about leadership. Leadership is about service. Leadership is not about dictation. Sometimes we grow up with the idea of what leadership means. And that idea of leadership could be very militaristic. Leadership. I said so, we do it. True leader takes his people with him or her in a direction that he or she has strategically focused upon, but in such a manner that his followers or her followers believe it is their way to go. So always consult. Okay? Having said that, I've been asked to speak to you about the Democratic Alliance. Part of the brief wants to give an overall picture as to what our structure is composed of. We are the federal party. As a federal party, we believe in the separation of powers. Okay? We have federal executive, the federal structure. We then have your 9 provincial structures, and in 2 of our provinces we have regions. So we have regional structures. Those 2 provinces are Gauteng and the Western Cape. When we get back to the federal structures, the federal structure comprises of the federal Congress. It's an elective Congress, and that happens once in 3 years. At that Congress, we elect our federal leader. We also elect the chairperson of the federal chairperson, that is, and 3 deputy chairpersons. Immediately after, and it is at that particular platform, that we then look at setting, passing resolutions and issues of policy and position papers, etc. So that's the highest decision-making body of the party. Then we have the Federal Council. Federal Council is made up of representatives from all the provinces and from all the biggest caucuses in the different legislatures. So it is national, provincial, as well as council legislatures. Now, caucus means it is that group of Democratic Alliance representatives in, say, in the city of Johannesburg or at the legislature in Gauteng. That body is the next important decision maker outside of the Federal Congress. And at the first Federal Council meeting that we had immediately after Federal Congress, that is where we elect the chairperson of the Federal Council, who will and a deputy. Those two persons then serve as the chairperson and deputy chair of the Federal Executive. Now, what is our Federal Executive? Federal Executive is a body just below that does the normal running of the party. It's almost like your core management team. And that is comprised of federal leader, the federal chairperson, the 3 deputies, the 9 provincial leaders. You look at the chief whip in Parliament. You also look at our auxiliary organizations such as our DA Youth, our Democratic Alliance Women's Network. Those federal chairpersons serve on it. The federal finance chairperson sits on it. And also we have the CEO of the party that sees to the administration, the COO, and of course the chief financial officer, because we work with the core issues that we face on a day-to-day basis. At the first meeting of our federal executive, we then nominate and elect a chairperson of our Federal Legal Commission. That chairperson does not serve on the federal executive on a day-to-day basis. He or she comes and reports on issues that we want them to come and report to us on in terms of disciplinary action, legal action that we're taking in terms of going to court, etc. We also have what is known as the Federal Commission on Electoral Colleges. Those are all the electoral colleges as we are going into local government election now, that are established in every municipality, that does the necessary interviewing of candidates, etc., so that they then almost shortlist candidates. It is specific questions asked, looking for specific answers, points are allocated, and then the shortlisted individuals then go to another process which is known as a selection panel, where there is much more in-depth questions asked. There's also an online test that is being done, and we have a performance development management system in our party. Believe it or not, as a political organization, we measure our contribution to the overall goal of the party. Otherwise, I'm not accountable to anyone, and I can just go home most of the time and sit and watch television and then earn a salary at the end of the month. Because who's going to gauge what my contribution is towards my caucus, or what my contribution is towards building the party, but more importantly, what is my contribution in service to our communities? So all those points get put together, and then of course a ranked list is formed. Now when that list is compiled, to ensure that there's checks and balances, that list goes back to the Federal Council of Electoral Colleges to see that the processes and procedures that we have in place have been followed to the letter, because we have appeals processes. And any appeals are then dealt with at that level as well. But when the FCEC, as we call it, has okayed the list, it comes back to the provincial executive, because it is local government elections. And as the leader, myself and my colleagues have a look at those lists, and we say, so what is it that we have here? Does this list meet the demographics of our country? Please note that we don't look at quotas. We look at fit for purpose, and we look to see if there's anybody here in these lists that are too far down, yet we understand and know that that person should be higher up. What is it that has brought that person so low down? and is perhaps not in an elected position, we then look at adjusting the list so that we have the necessary skills balance taking place. That, in a nutshell, is what happens at the federal level. Now, we have the federal constitution. We also have provincial constitutions because we're a federal party. At the provincial level, provincial leaders get elected minimum every 2 years, depending on your constitution. Some constitutions talks about 2 years in office. Other provinces talk about situation here, we talk about 6 months after any election of a general, because it just helps us to be able to deal with going through an election with the leadership that is already there. And of course, needless to say, at the elective Congress, provincial Congress, the provincial leader is elected and the chairperson of the province. We then also have a provincial executive, which is then representatives of all the caucuses within that province, and also the ancillary organizations within the province. So it's, in other words, it's a duplicate of what has happened at the federal level, they have at the provincial level, and then not to bore you, when we have regions, it is duplicated with the regions as well. And what does regions comprise of? Regions comprises of constituencies. In the South African setup, the only constituencies we have is, of course, wards, because there you directly vote for an individual in a ward, and that is a constituency that is demarcated by the demarcation ward. But when it comes to national and provincial elections, there are no constituencies. It is purely on a proportional list basis. So as an organization, as a party, we have in Gauteng 50 constituencies because we have combined MPs and NPLs. NPLs is members of the provincial legislature, and MPs, of course, are those members who serve at the national level. And we have split the province, more so because we have 5 regions. Within each region, in terms of the number of votes that they have the number of seats that we've given to them, and therefore we have it demarcated, and we have on average between 10 and 15 wards each to look after. That's your constituency. Your constituencies, of course, are made up of branches, which emanate from every one of those wards that we have across the country. In Gauteng, we have close to about 1,200 wards across the province. So we have 1,200 branches. Now, that is the structure of the party. Remember, you can have strategy, and as leaders, you know you can always need to have a strategy, but you're going to need to have structure so that you can actually function. That, in a nutshell, is what we are about. Let's come to policy. Policy is something that drives your party to where you want to go to. Okay? And we have a number of policies. Please, I'm going to ask you to please visit our website. Just punch in Democratic Alliance South Africa political party and you'll come up with it. Go through it, very interesting. We change it every 6 months, sometimes sooner if needs to, because we are constantly doing research, not just in South Africa, but also externally, because we don't operate in an island or a vacuum. We are influenced from what happens outside, and we need to be up to date and with it. Otherwise, we lose out. Okay? I'm going to leave the policy issues for when you ask questions. Otherwise, I'm going to bore you by going through them all, and our time, I think, catches up with us. So, the next topic was about our manifesto. We are in an election here, and it is always, as political parties, you live from election to election. So you're just out of election mode, and then you're into election mode again. And these are going to be very exciting elections. And I'm not going to bore you with politics here and promote the Democratic Alliance, but I'm going to ask you this. Those of you who are South African, please go and register to vote. Exercise that right that so many of us have suffered personally to ensure that you have today. That is democracy and that is leadership. Very often you hear people say, I'm not interested. You know what, all you politicians have the same thing to say. Make a lot of promises, when it's election time, I will see you at my door, and thereafter, I don't see you again until the next elections. Possibly true, but that is why you have a performance development management system. In this province, we have taken business principles, and that is how we operate. We have what is known as a master report that comes over my desk on a daily basis, and at a glance on that dashboard, I'm able to see what every one of my public representatives has done 3 days ago. Within 72 hours, everything is reported, and I can then take the corrective action that needs to be taken. That is how on time we are, and I can do the necessary interventions. So if you Democratic Alliance, it's the first time you see a Democratic Alliance councillor knocking on your door, asking why is it so. They should be there in the streets, serving you all the time, being your voice. What can you expect in our manifesto? This being a local government election, it is those bread and butter issues that we see every day. The potholes in the road, the grass that is not cut on our verges of the road, the stormwater drains that are blocked. When it rains, we have flooding. The sewage water mains that are overflowing, the electricity supply, the water supply, the state of general cleanliness of our environment. All those things we see on a daily basis. Very often, people see even local government elections and national government elections. Similarly, they will talk about local issues when we're actually dealing with the national government issue. But that is it. I can't turn around and say, it's not my responsibility. This is a local government election. What we will be focusing upon is the thing that affects you most. At your age, average age here about 22. Am I right? 22? No. Maybe younger? Maybe older? Yes. Okay, I'm trying to be. I see there's a lot of ladies here, so always do. Catch up tips, guys. That reminds me about this. I went to my dad and I said to him, Dad, you must embrace your mistakes. He called my sister and hugged the two of us. What you can expect is this. So emphasis is on jobs. It's on employment. 65% of our youth between the ages of 15 and 34 unemployed. You find yourself with a bleak future ahead of you. Now you have a choice to remain unemployed, to get yourself educated, to seek a job, or to get yourself educated, as you are doing here, to become an entrepreneur, a creator of opportunities. That's a choice that you have. As a politician, my job, our job, is to create an environment in which you are able to find a job, or to find opportunity to actually start a business. And that means we need to look at policy, and we also need to look at spending patterns. Today, a very important day. I hope you're going to be less bored later on when you watch the Minister of Finance give his speech. Very critical. You have to juggle those balls all the time. So it's going to be about job creation. So what has local government got to do with job creation? Everything to do with job creation. Because it is in the local government area too, just as you have at the provincial level or you have at the national level, you have certain things that you can do. Your bylaws affects the creation of business. It can either enhance business opportunities or it can restrict business opportunities. This very venue that we are at used to be a house, a residential home, that you have it rezoned to have business sites. That rezoning has to go through the local government structure for permission. You have to then comply with the bylaws, and that is you need to ask permission from the neighbors around you. And it's a whole process that gets put into place. Now you can either increase the red tape, or you can reduce the red tape and roll out the red carpet. The red carpet is the way. Remember too that when you do establish a business, it has to do with a whole lot of issues that goes with it. At the moment, if it's a home, a residence, you'll have maybe 3, 4 people, maybe max 5, even this area of people occupying the building. But if you have a business running here, how many of you are here presently? You're about 30 odd. That's 30 odd people that has to use the infrastructure. Toilets, the water, the electricity. It is a burden upon the infrastructure that is here. So it is that part infrastructure development that needs to happen. And that is where government has the spending ability. And that spending ability has to be in terms of tenders that has to go out. And if you break down tenders, instead of giving one huge tender to one individual or one company, you break them down so that you can give more people opportunities to get those tenders. And that is where the job creation comes in. That is also where the opportunity comes in for skills development as well as for businesses to start. So job creation is the thing we're looking at, number one, critical. Number two is education. You see, there always has to be a match between education and what the private sector wants in terms of the economy wants. If you have a disjunction between the two, you make it extremely difficult and costly for an employer. Because now I start up a business and I need to train everybody. I need to train each and every person that comes through my business. Be it a plumber, has been qualified as a plumber but doesn't know anything about plumbing. Because the process has been just too short, we now have the seat out there. So you deal with it, then you have to bring that person, you still have to train that individual, and then get productivity out of it. So it's those type of things that we'll be looking at to ensure that at the local government election level as such, we're able to deal with it. The city of Johannesburg, for example, gets a budget in the billions. It's a heck of a lot of money. This is the economic hub of South Africa, Gauteng. But Johannesburg plays a very important role there, just as China does. Because you have all the your head offices of businesses, capital here in Sandton, Rosebank, Johannesburg area. So we need to make it extremely enticing for foreign direct investment into South Africa, more so into our local authorities. And we need to make it conducive for them to do business here. Once I've had that in the conclusion, how is it that we then take all the structures that we have, and you can ask me the issues on the questions on policy, how do we implement it? Because you see, I'm here talking to you as an opposition politician. And for me, it's easy to point out the faults of my opponents who are in government. But we do govern, and that is the difference. Right here in Gauteng, we govern a small municipality with a budget of about 300 million rand. A lot of money, but small in comparison to your bigger cities. Mid-bar. Because of the way we do things, in Gauteng, it has the fastest growing economy, the standard of living is higher, the quality of life is better, the unemployment rate is lower. Not something that we have sucked our mouth up, because surveys are done on a yearly basis by the authorities themselves. And year in and year out, it is the best performing municipality in Gauteng. And believe it or not, our mayor, Umgani Boloy, was a 27-year-old young man. He sticks to all our principles and he carries them out. And it is through accountability, through that PDMS, the performance development management systems that we put into place, that I can on a monthly basis gauge where that municipality is going to and hold him accountable together with his executive. What is the average age of his executive? 60. Now you have a young man with an average age of 60. is executive. Fitness for purpose. A young man, dynamic, and a leader. That is what you want to be. And he leads a caucus of people twice his age. It is because he uses the tools and their experience to the benefit of his people by giving direction and giving leadership. I'll end there and you can ask me questions, please. Otherwise, you can afford to sleep. I'll do what I normally do in my classrooms. I'll say, please stand. Please stand. Oh, come back. We just had lunch, huh? Stretch. Stretch it out, okay? We're in an informal environment here. I'd like for you to enjoy. You've listened to my monotone voice, please sit down. Okay? There we are. Stretch. Right, now I want you to give me some grief, all right? Make me sweat for my supper.
Oh, you will.
This is your opportunity to ask me those awkward questions. This is your opportunity.
So, can I start off very light? So I want to ask you personally, why did you choose to join the DA? Because you had options in front of you when you were a younger person. You could have done any number of things. Why the DA? Why not any of the other parties at the time?
Well, let me put it to you this way. I grew up in a home that was very political. My mom was a white woman. My dad from Indian descent. My grandfather being Indian on his side, and my grandmother being a colored woman. Both my mom and dad were ostracized by their families. One because he got married to a white woman, and two because she got married to a non-white man. And they started both their family. So we were very politically aware. At the age of 7, coming back from school, walked into our home in Gauteng and found it empty because we were forcibly removed to Western Township. And that influenced my life in a very fundamental way. And I, at a very young age, said I'm going to be a catalyst for change. So yes, at a young age already got involved in the trade union movement. I was involved, incidentally, my matric year was 76. And part of that uprising, trade unionist, ANC operative, quickly wore the uniform, traffic department, so could use that uniform for easy movement and doing the necessary that needed to be done. And when the new South Africa dawned in 1994, 96 was the Constitution. I said, yes, in my lifetime it happens that my child is no longer going to be seen as a second-class citizen, or in terms of the law, be subhuman. So that motivated me. Because you see, as a young dad, I couldn't take my children where I could afford to take them to, because of the color of their skin. And that motivated me all the more. In my lifetime, my children are going to be free. Yes, we've achieved freedom. Freedom of what? Freedom to choose to become free. Freedom to choose to become free. I have a quote here from Nelson Mandela in that regard. Just bear with me. How about this? From a notepad to a notepad. How about that? As ek nie slim nie, maar not clever. You know, this thing can also be bamboozling. Sometimes you're busy talking and then you lose it. You have a problem. But anyway, I'll get there. We are not yet free. We merely achieved the freedom to be free. That was Nelson Mandela in 1995. We are not yet free. We merely achieved the freedom to be free. Nelson Mandela. So in a nutshell, when 94 came, 94 came, sorry, we had government elections, national. In 95, we then had municipal elections. I was a municipal officer in the trade union movement, so of course it was a changing of the guard and positions and new organograms and things. And I said, not for me. And I keep people accountable. I said, do we have the experience and do we have the skills and so on to continue to build this country of ours? It has to be an inclusive South Africa that we fought for. and I became disillusioned. I was pushed out of the party and I moved to England, and that's fine. And then, of course, started my own business, and then approached to get involved. Once it's in your blood, Steve, making money, yes, makes life easier, but having a challenge and a quest and a calling is a different thing. And then when the time came and I was asked, because just when I moved in from Florida, from Eldorado Park, that very year of 94, a few months after the elections, my wife and my eldest daughter got killed in a motor car accident. That's why I knew about the Ronald Barbara thing recently, because those were the attorneys that dealt with my claim. So I've been through a torrid time. My surviving daughter and I then joined the DP then, because Tony Leon and Paul Ashison knew me when I was on the bargaining council as a trade unionist. And at that stage, the DP had at one stage governed in the city of Johannesburg. So there was a mutual understanding and respect for each other. And they said, come on board. I had Martinez van Schalkwyk also approach me and I said, no, NNP. I said, no, I can't. I looked at the manifestos, I looked at what they stand for, their policies, etc., the vision, and I said, I can contribute here. And hence I became involved. I didn't want to stand as a ward councillor incidentally in Ward 70, but I was the chairperson of the branch, and I grew the branch. And then just naturally they elected me nominated me as the chair, as the ward councillor. I beat the incumbent who was there for 20 years. I beat him. And I think I got about something like 77% of the vote. So I beat my opponent to it. And I've been involved ever since. The thing is, I'm involved because I want to make South Africa a better place. You have to have a reason in life. And the reason in life can be that I want to climb the ladder and make lots of money. It can also be that when I do climb that ladder, I have a lot of money, that I will make the lives of the other people, my people, better. Because remember, when you're an employer, those employees of yours are part of the organization. Pay them fairly.
I have a question relating to your education policy. So, education is my passion. Hence, I'm pursuing a master's in education at Wits. So what struck me about your education policy is the fact that there seems to be a disjuncture between what your education policy aims and to achieve, and also your economic policy. So essentially we have three types of education, or three different branches of education. You have education which is performance or competition driven, which relies heavily on the issue of globalization, free markets, privatization, decentralized education, etc. And then we have education which is finance driven, which is run parallels with the private sector, so we're providing labor to private companies and corporations. And then we have education which is equity driven, which is preoccupied with addressing existing inequities, inequalities, and improving access to quality education to marginalized groups. So it seems as though there's a disjuncture between your economic policies which promote free markets and which have liberal undertones, and then you say that your education policy is equity driven, but you talk of privatization and decentralizing the education, and there being rewards based on performance, and there being rewards based on competition. So it seems as though you are claiming one thing, but then your policies are contradicting themselves.
On that question, this is where I leave the room. I like what you said. Now, there is no disjuncture. The three have to be combined. You cannot have either one in isolation. That's an unfortunate thing. But that also, being unfortunate, could also be the fortunate thing. Let me quote something for you here in terms of our education policy. I spoke about the kids, youngsters, unemployed. That's about 63% in that in terms of stats essay. Now, in the 2014-15 financial year, South Africa spent 246 billion rand on education. That was roughly about 23% of the total budget. Okay? What is our return on investment? What does that mean? While we have improved access to education, we have not improved on the quality of education. I'm talking about equity. That is the quality of education. Having the right to have an education is one thing. Having the right to have a quality education is another thing. And if the person looks at the international assessments for maths, for example, in South Africa, internationally, South Africa comes second last out of 63 of the countries that participated. You know the statistics, you're doing a master's. And when it comes to literacy, we come third from last out of 49 competing countries. Now, a study released by the Council for Higher Education in August 2013, I'm talking still about old stats, it's been updated, revealed that 1 in 4 students in contact institutions graduate first time out. In other words, within the allocated 3 years or 4 years. Only 35% of the total intake, and 48% of contact students graduate within 5 years. And out of those students, only 5% are covered in black that succeed in higher education. So that is the equity you're talking about, and the equality that you're talking about. What? No, she gave me a whole basket of them. How do you drive an economy? Each other economy is there that is better than the free market at this moment. You need to work at something else. You really need to look at it. If you look at the institute, the Free Market Foundation, Bernstein, go to a paper last year, 2015, and she speaks about the fact that we perhaps need to look at doing away with minimum wages. Now, I'm a trade unionist at heart, and I think it came to very clearly here. The thing is that unless we level the playing field, we are not going to be able to get that equality that you're talking about. And we need to have a free market system so that it brings in investment, so that with that investment that comes in here, you have capital invested, and you then have an economy that's used to drive, because the fit between education and what the economy needs is a match, and that then drives the economy, and you have job creation. And when you have job creation, you have everybody lifted out of poverty. Because once you have a stable job, you can lift yourself out of poverty instead of a hangout. You and I need to discuss, and I like it that you're doing a master's. So may I start my contact details? Please get it from her, and let us sit there and talk. All right.
Just a short request, raise your voice.
I will raise my voice.
Thank you.
Before you do, the gentleman over there was first, and it looks like a journey, so
I think it's in light of what is currently happening in South Africa. The policy equality of opportunity, I think that's the actual DA policy, it's equality of outcome, one between the two though. It's almost like over time DA has some sort of put an image of being non-racial. Getting into a space where everything currently in South Africa is very racialized. I want to hear the DA's take on it. And again, I think still on that point, it seems that the whole non-racial, I think notion has some sort of become a fallacy. Are there changes maybe within the DA policies that maybe one should be looking forward to in the next upcoming months or something?
I don't think you'll find any change in terms of our stance on racism. We get against racism, period. Now, as an organization, we can have a particular policy which says that you are all equal. But individuals have their own take on things. We had the Penny Hart, I think, putting out a tweet. She caused the DA more harm, our image more harm, than the Diane Colabana posted. And yet she's just an ordinary member. That we have absolutely no control over it. We did take out of the contest that we revoked her membership. The thing is this, that I would never feel as comfortable as what I am in the Democratic Alliance if there was any racism perpetuated within the organization. I wouldn't. I fought my life, most of my life, I fought against oppression of any kind. And I will definitely not stand by and be part of an organization that would want to perpetuate racial undertones or racism and believe that one person or one race is better to any other race. Not at all. So our policy has always been very clear. We are a party for all the people, and we are intent upon building a country in which all of us have equal opportunities, in which we can enjoy the freedoms to exercise our talents to the best of our ability, and therefore to achieve what we can set our minds out to achieve. An equal opportunity society for all. I hope I've answered your question.
It's fine. I'm good. I'll probably ask you privately.
Please do.
Thank you, Chair.
I'll do that.
Taking into consideration the past injustice of this country, do we have specific policies that seek to address the triple three challenges, unemployment, poverty, inequality? If you do have them, how are we going to do it?
Well, we believe in exactly what the policies are there. Contrary to what many people think, I'm a strong supporter of affirmative action and VE. There's absolutely nothing wrong with it. It's the implementation thereof. You see, you can have all the best policies in the world, it's how you implement it. Because it's not just about implementation too. The moment you implement something, we have to look at what are the outcomes going to be. And outcomes is not where you stop. You need to look at impact. Because ultimately, that is where you make the change. What you put into place now, your policy into place, you formulate your policy, you implement your policy, you follow through and you see what the outcomes are, and then you have to look at the impact over the period of time. What has the impact and outcome been of BEE and affirmative action as practice now? A few people have become richer. The gap between those who have and don't have is ever increasing. We say, and I spoke earlier about the breaking down of tenders, of processes. Break it down so that each one has a share. Smaller businesses can enter into the marketplace. Coming back to education and the economy, the junction we're talking about. We talk about using the Taiwan methodology. When we look at, check them out, right, in terms of innovation. You get a young child, student, that you catch them at school already, and you then steer them in the direction that you know that's the IQ you set for. And you then go with that child or that young entrepreneur, and you walk with that individual through the innovation, through the implementation, even up to the patenting of whatever it is that they have developed. And then you manufacture on big scale. They're doing it now with UJ. We'll chat about that one. So, and then I'll come to second.
Just have two questions I've written them down. So that,
sorry, you're shaking your head. I don't need to formulate another policy when there is a policy in place that can work. It's just that you need to implement it properly.
Can you name it like other parties that are having nationalization?
We don't believe in nationalizations. You spoke about the free market system. So we don't believe in nationalization. But there has to be an address in terms of land distribution, because when you have land, you have money. And all those things, because it is we have a very short period of time here for me to explain. The thing is that you have huge tracts of land that belongs to the state. Right? We also have to feed the nation, if you're talking about land policy. We also have huge tracts of lands that are under kingdoms. So you have communal lands, and people have to farm on communal lands. Who owns the land? So it's more intricate than that, but it has to be addressed. The more you release land, and you put people on the land to actually work that land, you'll be able to address the issues of unemployment to a large extent, also giving people opportunities, and then of course feeding the nation as well.
yes, the first question is how much of the 2 billion you mentioned in the manifesto It's employment and education. Indicated that the 65% of the youth
Yeah.
that is currently unemployed. Is it 65, 63?
63%.
63%, yes. And my question is, and education as well, that is in the manifesto. My question is, how much of that has been, how much improvement has that been done wherever the DA is functioning? And then the second question is, what is your bridge between empowerment and employment? Are you focusing more on are we focusing more on employment since we have 65% of the youth that is unemployed, which also gives a separate margin of adults and old people, pensioners, etc., who are also unemployed because of that, or you're also focusing on empowerment, and what is the strategy for the two?
The two of them have to be walking side by side. In other words, it's like the two legs that you walk with. You cannot have the one without the other. You talk about empowerment. Empowerment is a lot of different things. To a person who's unemployed and you give them employment, that is empowerment. If you don't have a job, you have nothing. If you get a job, you are empowered. So if you're looking about empowerment in terms of getting people into, you look at the informal businessman, to empower that person to enter into the formal economy, that is empowerment. Okay? Let me get back to the education aspect.
Can I be more specific on empowerment? I think when we're speaking of job creation, we're actually speaking of a certain type of elevation from poverty. But when we're speaking of empowerment, we're speaking of a long-lasting, more independent.
Now I've got you.
I'll just conclude here.
Okay.
So my question actually is, I'll be more specific. When I say empowerment, I mean like skills, rather than being like tools or whatever. But what is your focus on skills, or skill development, giving more skills, which will help make the people to empower people, to employ people? This is actually what the idea that
But anyway, look, I'll answer about. You see where we gather.
Come again?
You asked where we gather. The question was, encapsulated where we gather, we were able to make the difference.
Yes.
Okay. I think where we have the bigger impact is when we're actually governing in a province because there's more money available. That is the Western Cape. But you also have the Metro, which is Cape Town. And you have a couple of municipalities that we run there. But whatever we put in place there affects Midway as well. Hence we have, as I indicated, the successes we've achieved. The first thing we're looking at, for example, the EPWP program that's run. People are given brooms to sweep the streets. And it's a 6-month job. So people are getting money from the state, okay, to clean the streets. What is the impact? The impact is, our streets cleaner or not? And after 6 months, that person is unemployed again, and the next person is employed. What we do in the Western Cape, from the provincial right down to the municipal levels, when people come in, we look at the survey, we do a survey, skills survey. What is it that this person has done before? And if an individual who has applied to come in there says, I have been a plumber, I've worked as a plumber, we will take that individual and put him to go and work with the water department to go and sort out the water leaks that we have. So that is better utilization of the resource. If we look at an individual that says, I've been a builder, I can build, and we'll take that individual and put him into a department that deals with infrastructure, so that there is an empowerment that takes place at the same time. We also have internships, where we employ people on an internship basis over a period of 6 months to a year. And it's not just about being in the office doing IT or whatever. It is even as far as plumbing is concerned, even as far as driving is concerned, for people to get driver's licenses, because that is a skill to uplift and empower a person. It is those, and it's the utilization of that funding that we get as a grant from national in terms of the EPWP program. We also believe in the fact that you look for your labor force within the area that where those services will be delivered, so that there is a beneficiation that takes place. Long-term empowerment is exactly what I was talking about earlier, is about going to and seeing that here's a young entrepreneur who's really wanting to make a difference and to start up his or her business, and to actually invite that person into an incubator environment where we assist that individual all the way through in terms of registration of his or her business and complying with everything else in terms of the law, and then also even as far as looking for funding, so that you are able to give that person a step up and an opportunity to really make a success out of it, because you know that business is risk, and many a business doesn't succeed after 2 years. So we won't just take a person through a 3-month period. We'll take a person up to 9 months, and if they continue to need our assistance, we will take them all the way through to ensure that they succeed. Because you have to have, it's not just about getting jobs, it's about building the economy. If you build the economy, you are able to give people more jobs. I hope that I've kind of answered your question.
I was waiting for the crunch.
The crunch is that in the Western shape, no.
How much is the success? How much you
We have huge success over there.
from the difference from the time where
From the time.
where you started, or maybe DA had the control over the province, right to now.
DA.
What has been the rates in terms of?
I'll tell you again, Melbourne, that is a small municipality. At this moment in time, because it's a very small municipality, we have over 163 interns. In a very small municipality, the total staff there is something like 360. But we have those interns there, teaching them different skills from computers, to plumbing, to firefighting, to traffic law enforcement, to electricians, to driving, horticulture, and we turn those people out. We turn out 64 young people per year. You are making a difference. The unemployment rate in Gauteng overall is hovering at around about the official unemployment rate is hovering around about 28%. Melbourne, where we govern, is on 13%. That's the difference. So you have to average out in terms of comparing what to what. I'll have you on the number.
Mine is number 2 or 3 questions. The first one is on land.
Sorry, can I say we've only got 5 minutes left,
Okay.
so
Yeah,
can you limit it to one question? Is that okay?
They're just going to link to each other. So, on your policy on land, you mentioned that you believe in expropriation of, on distribution of equal land to every South African citizen, right? And yesterday, my question is that how do you plan on doing that, given the fact that the bill, the expropriation bill that has been passed yesterday, you guys were actually opposing it. So I want to know how do you actually plan on distributing that land? And then another one is on the entrepreneurial development. How do you plan on increasing the high interest rates, given the fact that it's so difficult to start a business, and the fact that we need protection from the outside competition? So what's your policy on actually protecting these small businesses in terms of other competitors from China or Japan also?
You know, you've asked me 3 questions in one. Let me answer the first one. I never said that each individual will get a piece of land in South Africa. I never said that.
No.
Not at all. I said there has to be an addressing of issue of land. The people are claiming land has been expropriated before and needs to be addressed fairly and equitably. We also say, quite frankly, that the people that have given RDP houses, etc., or living in government-owned housing stock, that has to be given their title deeds. Okay. Because it is very broad that you're talking about. Let me get back to the issue on. We were talking about how do we entrepreneurs and how do we protect them a small scale entrepreneurs. Remember, we're living in a global village. What is our most expensive commodity when you start in the business? Your most expensive input. Capital. What is it? Labor. Labor in South Africa. So, also when you look at the scale, we're becoming less and less productive as South Africans. So that is what makes it so difficult for us to entice direct foreign investment and even domestic investment Because you look at the environment and you say cheapest because I'm going to employ 20 people. And if I don't get my production out of them, I'm going to go out of business very quickly. So it's an holistic approach. Please read it. It is very interesting because we talk about, at the moment it's about, if it's more than 250 people that are being employed in the business, it's a big business. We say, even in terms of what we're having presently in South Africa is you have huge unions and you have big industry. And those two are colluding with each other, or they are having agreements, and it affects even the micro guy that's at the bottom here. So whether I employ 5 people, I have to give them the same benefits as the guy that is employing 50,000 people. I have to give them the same benefits. There's a disparity between the two. Can I carry those costs or can't I? And the same benefits that are derived from those negotiations for either one of the two is never actually carried through to the bottom. In fact, it's the burdens that are carried through the bottom. And that is what also stifles small business and micro business from starting up. So we need to address it on that level as well. In other words, the shop floor agreements should come to an end. But at the same time, we need to protect the rights of workers so that they are not just discussed. I had a question over there.
So one way to address employment is the upskilling that you talked about. Last week we had an entrance session where we were talking about we are in a current economic policy framework in South Africa where inflation rates are kept as low as possible, which has as the other person I mentioned, has a high interest rate, which affects consumer confidence and spending, all kinds of things, which then ultimately leads to low employment because there are impacts on not creating jobs because people are spending less. So it's one thing to hear about upskilling programs, which is really great, but how does the DA, in terms of federal economic policies, want to change the current economic policy framework in which we operate so that it's not simply creating greater skills with the same pie, but that the actual pie is growing bigger, if that makes sense. Is there a plan to reduce interest rates? And
it's known as our 8% growth plan. And it's holistic in terms of the questions that you guys have asked. For me to answer questions just like this, that's why initially it's very difficult for you to actually get any substance out of it. Please just go into our website and read it. It's very comprehensive and makes for good reading and easy reading. Okay, let's just look at this quickly.
So from the economic, I went into the policy with, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, the thing is that if we have a consistent growth of 8%, right?
Of economic growth.
Economic growth.
Yes.
It will diminish unemployment by more than half within the next 5 years.
But is part of that 8% road plan policies to increase inflation and decrease interest rates?
Well, yeah, look, the thing is, you need to combat them all. If you have too high inflation rate, of course, it just withers away the value of the capital withers away. So it's always that combination in terms of macroeconomics that you have to put into play. Okay, and that is not a very easy ball to juggle, and I think that is what our minister is going to have to deal with today. What we're saying is this, that you need to look at where you can make a difference in terms of government. And the savings that goes with it, and I think that to a large extent, and also to keep taxation as low as possible, because if you start fiddling on taxation, you're already overtaxed as is. You also then strive for the economic growth, isn't it? So we're saying that what needs to happen is you have to look at the bloated public sector and private sector. Okay? But more so, where you can deal with things in terms of government. If we reduce the ministries to 15, the cost savings that goes into that already runs into a couple of billion because of the supports that has to go with it. And we also talk about, in terms of, there's one other spoke about how do you deal with the issue of empowering and about labor. What is the stranglehold that these big mega unions have and your big corporates have on the economy? Because you know it and I know it, that actual employment is created, and the engines of the economy is actually the micro and small businesses that are being pushed out all the more so. because of that monopoly that those two have, the bigger unions and mega conglomerates. You also need to look at the skills match in terms of our education. That's what the lady over here was talking about as to what the economy needs. The CETA processes it's extremely expensive and it hasn't worked. What you need is artisans. The more artisans you have, the more skilled welders, builders, plumbers, engineers you have, the bigger, the faster your economy will grow. And that is where the major brain drain of South Africa has been in terms of skilled workers. So it's not just about giving a person a job, it has to be a skilled job so that that person is able to be marketable and be able to sell their labor. If we look at it also in terms of creating a nation of entrepreneurs, if we can establish 1 million young entrepreneurs, and I'm talking about that, I'm not just talking about age, I'm also talking about the individual, I'm talking about the business too. That in itself will then ensure that we have that growth, that 8% growth. How do you create just 1 million wasn't just sucked out of our tongue. 1 million can be achieved. It is about breaking down of those contracts that we were talking about. It is going to where those successes have been achieved. You don't need to reinvent the wheel. You can go to India and you can see it. You go to Brazil and you can see it. In Brazil is in trouble now.
India had a protection.
Exactly, he's in trouble now. But a success story, quite frankly, over many years, is the 16th most powerful economy, that is Taiwan. Those people from a very young age are already taught to be entrepreneurs, not just to be seeking of jobs. And that is the history and the legacy that we still live with today. When you are at school, at university, the first thing our parents say to us, go and become a doctor or an attorney or become an accountant. Very few of our family, of our parents are saying to our children, go and study business so that you can become a businessman or a businesswoman and start up your own business. And that's a mindset that we must change.
Yeah, I'm going to end the session here. Sorry? My leadership, I have to say.
you know where your brain is part.
Thank you so much for that. The question I just want to ask is, as an economics student, I really struggle with this liberal economic agenda, whether it's a DA or it's promoted by just a private business. And the reason for that is, historically, there's no evidence that this, we're one of the countries that actually produces, that pursue this liberal economic agenda, and that it helped them to progress. And so that's the first thing. And the second thing is, why do we think that that's an appropriate economic agenda for South Africa? Because when you look at the Asian tigers or China, or even when you want to go back to the UK in terms of how they developed and how they protect their economy, there's just no evidence that this is really the appropriate policy for us. So I think for me, the issue that I have with the kind of economic policies that the DA promotes is that it's very ideologically driven, and who drives the ideology are the people who have their interests at stake. So we're talking about, we talk about white capital, right? So it's white capital that pushes ideology that we don't actually think that's going to work, and there is just no evidence for it. And then they have the rest of the party behind this agenda, and they convince them that this is the appropriate way because apparently these are other Western countries developed. So I think for me the issue is how can we really, if we're looking at the evidence from outside of the political realm, we should truly just saying, okay, why do you think it's appropriate policy for us? It's just that there's no evidence, and so how do you justify believing in it? How does the party justify it? Because it does then seem, for people like myself, that it is just the narrow interests of people within the party that are pursuing that. So that's just something, I had the honor of having you today, so I just also wanted to ask you that. Yes.
I want to throw a question back at you. You always have to compare apples with apples. What do you have as an alternative?
No, but sorry, that's not my truth. I'm not a political party. So it's the DA say that they have looked at everything else, and for them they feel the liberal agenda is the best. I just want to hear that from you, but I want to, do you know what I mean? I just want to go thoughts on why you actually think that that's, if you're promoting this, if this is your conclusion and this is how you reach it, how did the party come to the notion that this is the best agenda? Because I understand.
Political economics is a very interesting subject to study. I'm busy with my master's in that.
So I did have a follow-up.
Yeah. And I hear what you talk about because it is definitely an agenda that is driven by capital. Now, we need to strike a balance in South Africa. We look at what Thabo Mbeki tried to do, the African Renaissance. We also need to look at where communism has failed. And we need to bring in a mix, quite frankly, that is a South African solution. Our solution doesn't lie with people from outside telling us what to do. But you take what is best practice and where you have seen success, and you then bring those together so that you are able to then try and implement it here so that we can achieve the success that we hope to achieve. Okay? I believe that we need to ensure that there's beneficiation in terms of our raw materials, for example, that has been exploited. We've been exploited for centuries. There has to be no without nationalization. Without nationalization. No, without nationalization. You see, nationalization is going to get us where? We've seen it. If you do doing economics, just study the history, for example, of China. Why has China changed the policies? Because there has to be an incentive. You see, if I'm a farmer and you come and you take my land from me, and I produce 1 ton of millies per annum, before you come and nationalize my land. You come in and nationalize and say, this is no longer your land. Whatever you produce, you're now going to have to give to the state. Do you think that I'm going to work hard to get that ton or 100 tons or 100 tons or 1,000 tons of leaves to give me there? Because that is a system that worked, it failed. It's failed. So we need to look at another incentive. The incentive is this, that we need to make it conducive for people to invest capital. And not necessarily the white capital. That's just why our focus should be on small business, micro business. We need to look at manufacturing internally. We need to become inventors in South Africa for us to be able to compete with the globally competitive market out there. Because we are a consumer-driven economy to a large extent. What do we rely on mostly? Exports. And the minute platinum or the market falls, in terms of demand for platinum or coal or steel, which is the case as well, then our whole economy begins to crumble because of it. We need to become self-sufficient and self-reliant. In other words, buy South African, but also manufacture South African. And it's not going to happen where we have this protectionism around it. It can't happen. Because we see it in our shops. We see how people are unemployed in the Sasha Bourgeois, in the Cape Flats, etc., where we had those shoe companies and clothing companies, because it's cheaper to just go and buy in China. Incidentally, it's no longer manufactured in China, it's manufactured there on our borders, in Lesotho, in Swaziland, in Botswana, and so on, because the labor is cheaper. So we need to then strike a balance in terms of what is it in terms of human rights that we stand for as South Africans, because our constitution is a very liberal one, and I will die for it. And at the same time, we need to look at how do we grow our economies, and how do we get beneficiation out of it. We are a wealthy country. We are indeed. We are blessed with all the mineral resources. But are our people benefiting from it? Or who's, some are. You see, that is the problem. Some are. You and I must make it, all of us should. Now, you incentivize small business. We incentivize business to come in. Right? How do you incentivize? You have your economic zones that you talk about. If you go there to PE, you'll see that economic zone over there, it's standing practically empty. Okay? Because it is not implemented properly. The policy is there, it's just not implemented properly. We have the recipe, guys. You can have a recipe. If you don't follow it, your cake is going to flop. Let us just follow the recipe. We've got what it's there. It is for us to just implement it, and you will have the successes. In Mudbound, I know that I'm exceeding your time, but it's okay for me, unless I'm eating into your time. I'm here and I want to talk as long as you want me to talk. Okay? My meetings I've set aside, I've said to them, I'll phone them and I'm ready to take calls. The thing is this. Let's look at Mudbound. It's right here in Gauteng. Okay? How is it that you have the Heinekens and you have whatever, Roche and other big companies now coming and Moodey and establishing factories over there? Because in the first instance, we say to them that we will guarantee that you will get the necessary electrical supply from ESCOM. Because you go and you negotiate with ESCOM. Now you can talk about the power outages and such things. It's very funny how we have power outages just on hindsight. Huh? Have you ever asked yourself that question? Because there are those preferred customers. So it's about the negotiation process. Then you go a step further and you say the rezoning of property, of land. It goes through a whole vigorous process of bylaw compliance and everything else, and you say, so we have this land, we have a broader framework in terms of our IDPs and our expansion and spatial development. So it is industrial, sure. So you fast track the rezoning process. Then you need to look at the bulk infrastructure that I spoke about earlier. That is your sewer works, etc. Those sewer plants can't handle any expansion. So you then negotiate with the capitalist, now hold on, and they build their own little plant, and there's beneficiation from that plant. In return, they get tax rebates. They call it tax holiday. If you're going to invest 4 billion in a place, then you have the tax holiday for a period of 5 years. Once that 5 years is over, and you now have to start paying your rates and taxes in terms of market standards. Are you going to up and leave? You've got your infrastructure there. You're going to be there to stay. It's about enticing. We also go through the process of saying X percentage of your labor force will be from the community in Mudbound. Now you go to labor force because you can just be the person who sweeps or the person who washes the windows. We then go a step further and say, so what is it that you are going to put into place so that there is skills development for the labor that's happening over there? What are you manufacturing? Who's going to be your machinist and anything else? So there has to be a long-term beneficiation as well. And that's the only way that we're going to be able to capitalize on monopoly capital.
The thing is that, okay, sorry, I'm just going to say I'm going to highlight your session. I just as a last myself, I think, like, I'm not disagreeing that these are not great policies, and I don't disagree that they don't do, like, okay, so you just put policy front end. I think, like, what you're saying, like, these are vital things, but if you're talking about a radical economic transformation, which is what the country needs, as opposed to incremental economic transformation over time. So we don't want to a place that we only do that, only the have-nots have something in about 200 years. Like, if you really want a radical transformation, it has to be like some sort of radical policy. And so, like, whatever you speak to isn't like radical economic transformation. So that was my first point. And so just my second concluding one is that the thing is that DA, and I don't think like people can't call the DA on this, is that the DA is, or apparently seems very efficient. Like, even in, I mean, I lived in the Western Cape for a while, so whether it's like we're talking about like roads and like refuge collection and sweeping streets, and I don't think like people have an issue with like how, like in terms of the management of our DA does things. I think like people's hesitation with voting for the DA is that not when it comes to running basic things like that, it's you know, can you trust the party who we feel is relatively responsible to the old white guys who still have control of the power, who when they do come to power in the DA in the Western Cape, and they don't have a transformed executive. So I mean, I think those are the people. So it's saying yes, if you could vote a DA technocrat in that was going to be in charge of like building our roads and sweeping our streets, that would be great. But because the nature of politics is that voting a DA in government means a lot more than it means being in charge of transformation and all of that. And And I think that that's where people's discomfort are. So and those were just some of the issues that like we've spoken about as a group. And I saw they didn't have any questions, which is why I want to raise it, so that we did deal with it. Because we've been talking about this for weeks and weeks. And I know that they might have, whatever reason didn't come across. So that's why, just for the benefit of the group, I just wanted to speak to that.
Okay, you're talking politics now, and that's why I'm smiling. I can put this away. You see that notion about the DA being a white party is taboo. Yeah, the most powerful province that actually shifts and shapes the party, Gauteng. I'm not here as a token. I've been elected here with the majority vote. Stringent, very hard fought for competition in elections. 2 times running. My first opponent was a white man. My second opponent was a black female, who is still a colleague of mine and who I supported, and is now a deputy federal chairperson, to fill in second. It's about political maturity. We talk about radical transformation and radical change. It's good, because I'm sitting here among students. If you want to be radical, please be radical. Because I was radical. And it's only when you are radical that you're going to bring about change.
Yes.
Question the status quo. Hold me accountable. Ask me those difficult questions. And don't let anybody push you back. I still live by that philosophy. It is not the party of Tony Leon. And if you're going to believe that we're the party of capital, I go do fundraising, I go knock on doors and people say sorry. The white monopoly says sorry. You'll be surprised where we're getting our money from in this country. That capital. Capital from South Africa. Those very people who are the beneficiaries of, many of them are now giving because they realize that we need to change. Radical transformation of our economy, nationalization, it ain't going to work. We've seen it fail elsewhere. We need to come up with a mix where our state-owned entities are not performing. That's nationalization in a sense, isn't it? They say, hey, who does it belong to? Yes, God, who does it belong to? And I go on. They're failing. Why? Not because we don't have people that can run it. I said to you, we have the recipe, let's just follow it to the hill. And we can succeed. It is about the deferment of pleasures. It is about my time to eat. And as long as I can fill my pockets, I'm okay. I could have been a multi-billionaire if I had to shut my mouth up and just go with the flow. Because I was there with the power brokers of today. I'm a nobody. As a provincial leader of the Democratic Alliance in Gauteng, I'm servant number one. I'm your servant. I'm no better than you. I'm a citizen of this country. Hold me accountable, please do. That is our philosophy. What radical transformation? The radical transformation has come that we address the issues that are hindering and stifling our economic growth. I'm a trade unionist at heart. I will always be one. But our trade unions have too much sway. SATU can stop our children from getting an education. My brother-in-law is part of SATU. I still have family that says it's good. They're not my enemies. We are fellow South Africans. What we need to do is we need to lift South Africa out of the ashes that we are in. And we need to fight for that better South Africa. That is what it is about, and that is what you should be doing. The radical transformation, my dear lady, is not going to come by the nationalization. Radical transformation has to come when we take SAA and unbundle it. We unbundle it and we say, certain sectors of SAA we will retain as government, state-owned entity. But there's other areas that we either give out to private enterprises to run better than what we do, so that we can turn it around. That is draining our coffers instead of adding to our coffers. ESCOM. Who has the monopoly of supplying coal to ESCOM? No, you talk about transformation. No, you talk about radical transformation. That's the supply economy, isn't it? You don't have electrical supply. You can't have an economy going. Your roads, your rail. Radical transformation would be, for example, the mining houses, because we're mining, a mineral-rich country, isn't it? Isn't radical transformation that you then empower those mines to build their own rail station down to railway line down to Gauteng, and then have competition for what's it, Transnet and what's that, Metro Rail, Transnet. Then you have competition with Transnet. Then you can go and you can take for example, the old Durban airport and build another hub. Why don't you give it to the private sector and say do it under certain conditions? That is a radical transformation that we are prepared to go ahead and do. Say to ESCOM, to hell with you, we're going to break it down. We're going to privatize. We're going to hold you accountable. Instead of giving CEOs and so on huge millions of rands of bonuses, we'll give it to the engineers that turns things around.
So what about the informal settlements in South Africa?
Pardon?
The informal settlements in South Africa.
The informal settlements.
Yes, so
that
informal settlements and informal businesses, because that's what's actually at the bottom of the pyramid. In the sense that the people that you want to empower, to give skills to encourage this entrepreneurial culture, right, in this free market. Because now this is what I'm understanding, and I've been wanting to speak, so I'm sorry.
No, please speak your mind. Don't be shy to challenge me, please don't. If I don't have an answer, I'm going to tell you I don't have an answer.
Right.
We talk about your future.
So, this is what I'm saying right now. If you want to empower the people in South Africa, because firstly I'd like to say that I do not believe in having Western ideologies or Western systems that have been working for countries which work on the oppression of other places in the world. They've built up their structures from whatever, gold, resources, whatever they've stolen. And I know I don't want to get historical about, but it's the fact. It's the reality I deal with. I don't see how we can use Western ideologies that work to make these systems that have already had capital from our pain, if that makes sense, or from our hard labor. It doesn't matter. It doesn't make any sense to me. So why have we not looked at an African model? It might not be written down yet, but we have people from very low areas that have gotten this culture of entrepreneurship from nothing. So why are we investing in those people? Because they have children who they have to take to school, and these children look up to their parents who are entrepreneurs. So the only thing is their parents are only going to stay in these low areas because there's no one to fund it. And you were speaking about Brazil. Brazil actually, I think it was 2 years ago, developed a system where they integrated the informal sector, the informal economic sector of that country into Brazil to help, speed up their economy. So why haven't we looked at systems like that? Because I can see that, I like the fact that we're looking at different countries to look at their models and try and implement it with us, but we're not having an African model. And I don't think you're going to get much support if we are looking at having a free economy, whereas that will destroy, utterly kill infant industries. Why are we looking at other African countries or getting resources from them instead of getting them from overseas where there's costs that are involved in the transportation of those resources? So I think that was just my question. Why are we ignoring the informal sector, which is right in front of us and should be the place where we start implementing all these skills and resources and time and management? Because their children essentially are going to need to go to school, but with what money? If we have free economic liberal models that have worked for countries, not in Africa.
You've asked me a question that you don't have an answer to because that's why you're asking me the question. I said to you. The reason why I spoke about the Brazil issue, we don't need to reinvent the wheel. We don't. Hold on. Unless you're going to tell me you're going to reinvent the wheel and tell me why you're going to put it in its place. You see, it's one thing to have an argument about something that is existing, and you don't have an argument, or you can't strengthen an argument by giving an alternative.
That is true.
Because you're asking me, why can't we look at an alternative? We look at here. It is an alternative. It's about Africa taking Africa's responsibility for Africa. We have an African Union. Is the African Union working? No, it's not. It's not. You look at, if you want to go, for example, this goes to Moodey, that is a powerhouse. What system are they putting into place over there? What system is working in terms of that economy? It is about the micro business. It's about empowering that young man that is in that informal sector, where he has the skills, to give that young person the opportunity to exploit those skills, so that he or she can contribute to South Africa and to humanity. And unless you see, we have this legacy of the past. In my day, I was into school and I was given a substandard education because all I needed to do was to be able to cut a piece of wood with my furniture, or become a shoemaker, or if you wanted to go to university, you were stifled to either just become a social worker, or you needed to study, and that's why I have many PhDs in political studies. Because we were stifled. We had to carry water on our background. And that is the thing that we need to change. We have to change our education system so that our youngsters, there are many kids who may not be able to read, but have the ability in terms of math.
So you spoke about taking away the minimum wage. That's what takes some children.
No, you see, when you talk about the minimum wage,
Yes. I'm constantly.
yes, no. Yeah, let me talk about the minimum wage. The minimum wage means that everybody should have a minimum amount of an income. I mean, there's an international standard, it is $100 per day. International standard for living.
So in the UK, it's £7.
£7, but the international standard, that's a UK standard. The international standard is $2.
Okay, sorry, I see people are getting up. If you
Yeah,
don't mind.
because it's your lunchtime. Let's talk after.
Okay, so I've got a couple of announcements as well. Firstly, thank you very much for the engaging conversation. We've got a half an hour break. Mr. Moodey said that he would be available, so if you want to engage privately, you can do that. After our break, we're going to come back. Esri is kindly treating us to lunch, so we will get lunch while we watch the budget speech. So again, sorry quickly guys. So again,
I'll be here for the next 15 minutes. Whoever wants to have it.
okay, so again, a big thank you. I think as they say, we will see you at the polls, and there will be many opportunities for all of us to engage with DA, because I'm sure there will be a lot of campaigning in the build up to the elections. And we'll make contact details available, I'm sure.
Please do.
Okay.
Invite me to one of the sessions where you just have your free talks.